President Donald Trump gave a speech that was quintessential Trump, full of surprises and performance and excitement and in a dynamic way that actually electrified the audience in front of him. Words no one has ever spoken before about an address to Congress in this setting. It's basically a State of the Union, but they call it just a joint address to Congress because it's his first year in office. And the presumption is you won't have much to talk about because you've only been in office 6 weeks. Not this president, not this night. Obviously, Donald Trump knows good TV and how to deliver it. The public largely responding very favorably to the speech, and not just Republicans. But the story was very different on the other side of the aisle, with Democratic lawmakers refusing to clap or stand multiple times throughout the night for all sorts of very moving, personal, beautiful moments that typically would see bipartisan support. I mean, there was one that even brought Canadian Debbie to tears, and she is a hard-hearted news producer. I mean, you don't make Canadian Debbie cry. I've rarely seen it. Even she had some tears. Then there was the one cane-waving Democratic congressman who literally got escorted out of the chamber early on in the speech. He wanted to make a spectacle of himself, and he did. Where were the cries of horror from the Democrats in response to that breach of decorum, like we saw with old Joe, what's his name, a couple of years ago, who yelled out, "You lie," to Barack Obama. And then after the speech was over, you will not believe, I mean, maybe you will, but I think it's still shocking what one MSNBC host had to say, in particular about that sweet 13-year-old cancer-surviving boy. We're going to get into it now, starting with Rich Lowry, editor of National Review. Rich, I thought it was a great speech. I prepared for utter boredom because that's what these things typically deliver. Even with Trump, I just figured it's going to be kind of a bore. His past State of the Unions have not been anywhere near this entertaining. But last night, he kept everything tight. He didn't linger on any point too long. He didn't get too deep into policy to where your eyes glazed over. He was just hitting his points. He went off script in a way that was funny, endearing. I know the left didn't like it, but everybody laughed at the Pocahontas remark on Elizabeth Warren. They're just very funny asides, and his delivery. I was talking about this with Doug this morning. If I delivered the same things Trump delivered last night, people might be mildly bemused and say, okay, it's a good line. But the way Trump delivers these things really has you laughing out loud. He's so funny. And when he unleashes it, in the right setting, it's endearing and it totally works. And I think it's why, in part, the speech was so well received. CBS YouGov survey of 1,200 adults, though this is more heavily weighted toward Republicans, 51% Republicans, 27% independents, 20% Dems, but showing 76% approve of the speech. Time spent on issues you care about, 63% say a lot. Speech made you feel hopeful, 68%. And then even CNN with a survey, which does not appear to have that sort of partisan weighting, that 69% had a either very or somewhat positive reaction to the speech. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think for the ordinary viewer, that there's nothing you heard last night that you necessarily disagree with. I don't know, maybe tariffs or some things, but largely he emphasized things that are popular. And the headline of that speech, the headline of the first 2 months is Trump 2.0, the sequel, more Trump than ever. So it was longer, it was more combative in some ways, more entertaining, and these aren't really speeches so much; they're performances, right? So George W. Bush used to give speeches. He had the speechwriters, Mike Gerson, the late Mike Gerson, my friend Matt Scully, write these eloquent speeches that he'd deliver. You can't do that with Trump. It has to be in his words and and his way of speaking, which it is. How many times did he say, like we've never seen before, right? No speechwriter sits down and writes like we've never seen before. And the point you're just making a minute ago is as apt. A comedian, a really good comedian, you can say his lines as an ordinary person and they're not funny, right? Or they're not as funny. And 80% of the things Trump said last night, they were entertaining. You could say them, I could say them, someone else could say them. They wouldn't be funny because they're Trump, because it's uniquely Trump. So I don't like State of the Union addresses. I would prefer a State of the Union to be a 20-minute, eloquent, thematic speech. But that speech does not exist. No one's ever given that State of the Union. That's not what Trump did last night. But it works for him. Now, it's not hugely important. By Saturday, 2 or 3 other major news stories will have happened, but it was a good night for him.
Big time. Here is one of those moments where he was talking about some of the Doge discoveries on waste, fraud, and abuse. SOT 7.
Just listen to some of the appalling waste we have already identified. $22 billion from HHS to provide free housing and cars for illegal aliens. $45 million for diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarships in Burma. $40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. Nobody knows what that is. $8 million to promote LGBTQI+ in the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of.
That's it right there.
Yeah, just the way it says LBQIA+. It is funny, right? And there's a great meme last night of Al Green, waving his cane, and the caption was, "They promised me trans mice," because one of the items he of course mentioned was his experiment to try to create trans mice. I don't know whether they're successful or not. Probably if they're in the San Francisco school district, those mice, they would be certainly be trans. But that was hilarious. People hate that stuff, and it's memorable as well. It's something, if people were listening at the bar, they'll take away and remember the next day.
Exactly. Whether the Democrats found it funny or not, the average American sitting at home laughed at that. There's just no question. No one who doesn't have TDS didn't get a chuckle out of that, right? Like, he's exactly right. None of us has ever heard of that place, or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
Lesotho, although John Podhoretz was tweeting out, he goes, I've heard of it, but I did win Jeopardy 5 times.
Champion. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just John and whoever enacted that policy on the left. Okay, so let's talk about the Democrat response for a minute, then we'll go back to Trump. But the little signs, Simone Sanders tweeted out, and I totally agreed, they were giving off bingo vibes. Like, this was their big resistance. These tiny little signs, which look like, you were at an auction, like, I'll take Lesotho for $10. That read like, Musk lies or false. Like, whoa. Yeah. They're throwing down Musk steals. Okay. I mean, what war criminal? Oh, well, that's going to turn the hearts and minds. What did you make of the resistance with that? And some people wearing the pink in honor of the pea hats they wore back in 2016. This was their big FU.
Yeah, it was pathetic. So either just sit there and be civil. And by the way, clap at the nice moments. There's no reason for any American not to clap when DJ has this amazing experience of instantly being made an honorary Secret Service member, or just leave in mass and just do it. I think that would be bad. I don't think it would play well for them. But they got this in-between place. It was just pathetic. And it just advertised their cluelessness and their powerlessness. So, and Trump, obviously, he did this a lot in the first term as well, but last night it was really explicit. I'm going to call you out for not applauding anything I do. And then I'm going to have these wonderful people in the balcony who are cancer survivors or victims of parents and loved ones of victims of terrible crimes. Or I'm going to announce that we got the guy who blew up our 13 service members at the Abbey Gate. And I dare you not to clap. And they didn't. They took the dare.
Right.
So, they look grim. They're checking their phones. Just clap politely. You're not going to lose anything. But he got exactly the reaction he wanted. Just
show up looking normal and give the smattering of applause on the things that are obviously going to be supported by the people watching at home, and sit there politely, not doing anything on the things you disagree with. It's very easy. It's not hard not to make yourself look like an absolute moron. I really do wonder, what man, Rich, would say, "Oh, I'll take one of the little signs. Could I have one of those little popsicle sticks so I can hold up false?" It's just so undignified and unmanly. Yeah. There's something so teenage girl about it, snaps. It's the opposite of snaps. I'm embarrassed for them. And then with the pink outfits, and then with the white outfits, and then some with the T-shirts, look at that. There are men there. I don't know why I see a distinction between the men and the women doing this, but there's something kind of feminine about it. I just feel like it's so emasculating.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. And they just believe, and they have believed for a long time, that there's some way to delegitimize Trump such that he'll go away. You know, in the media and MSNBC, they had this constant debate whether we're going to platform him and show his speeches live. Like that was going to make a difference one way or the other, whether it was on MSNBC. And they seem to think that holding up their little auction paddles somehow is a gesture that's going to be meaningful to someone. And there is a famous intellectual, Lionel Trilling, in the 1950s, had this line about conservatism at the time, which wasn't in a great state, that conservatism is just a series of irritable mental gestures. And that's what progressive is at the moment. Maybe not mental, maybe that's giving them too much, or mental maybe in the psychological sense, but all they have at the moment is irritable gestures, and that's what the paddles were.
Yeah, they have irritable gesture syndrome. Gesture syndrome.
Feels like there should be an SNL skit on the medicine that addresses irritable gesture syndrome.
I don't know what it is. I think it's definitely not more Trump winning. That seems to aggravate it greatly. Trump knew this was coming, that they weren't going to root for him, even on the gimmies. It's like, I don't understand why. I guess they really have no meaningful leader, but like, why didn't some leader sit down with them beforehand and say, just don't project asshole. Okay, that's what we want to avoid. We want to be like the strong, sober, but likable ones in the room. They forget about likability, how important it is. So we'll get to the congressman standing up and harassing him, the weirdness with the signs and the paddles and the pink outfits, whatever. But Trump set them up for today's narrative in a way by calling out the fact that he knew they wouldn't clap or stand for anything, no matter how sympathetic the cause. Early on in the speech, here's a bit of that in Stop 4.
This is my fifth such speech to Congress. And once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me, and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do. Five times I've been up here. It's very sad, and it just shouldn't be this way. So Democrats sitting before me, for just this one night, why not join us in celebrating so many incredible wins for America? For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
Cutaway to Nancy Pelosi there by the pool feed, which, I mean, she looked terrible all night. Yeah. There were such unflattering, nasty-faced screen grabs of her. Somebody grabbed one and put it out and said, caption this. And Michael Knowles wrote, I'll get you, my pretty, and your little doge, too. Which pretty much encapsulated how you felt when you looked at her like, oh. You don't go out and buy a life jacket when the boat is sinking. And you don't buy gold when the economy has already collapsed. Clearly others are heeding this advice as gold hit all-time highs already this year. It's not too late for you, too. And you could have Birch Gold help you diversify into physical gold. Birch Gold specializes in helping you convert an existing IRA or 401k in whole or in part into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, and for no money out of pocket. One recent 5-star review said Birch Gold was, quote, knowledgeable, helpful, non-pressure. Get your free info kit on gold by texting the letters MK to the number 989898. There is no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, text MK to 989898 and let the experts at Birch Gold help you secure your future today with gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.